Welcome to another episode of New England Beer Buddies. You're here with Mark and Garrett, and we're continuing our Porter Pour-Off series today. We have a couple coffee-inspired porters lined up, and we're going to start with one from Northwoods Brewing Company. They're up in Northwood, New Hampshire. I really enjoyed this. This was relatively new to me from them, but I thought it was a pretty strong coffee porter. They describe some chocolate, wheat, and caramel rye malts, and they do finish it with a short cold brew cycle with the coffee beans themselves. So we'll see how all that works out. I'll start pouring here and stop yapping, and then we'll give you some impressions in just a moment. But let's see how they go. So right off the bat, I'd say a quick observation is the head, to the extent there is one, is pretty dark, but it's almost non-existent, which is kind of what we were seeing with these porters before. Sorry, I showed you a little bit. And I guess we'll take a sip and get to our comments beyond that.
Cheers.
Cheers. That coffee aroma is super strong up front, too.
I was just going to say that. Yes, very strong. Reminds me, in fact, a lot of the coffee aroma when you first put the beans in the coffee machine, not even so much of an actual cup of coffee, like the beans themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah, it almost has a bit of a, I think that cold brew process, it almost has a bit of that iced coffee kind of tinge to it. I guess that cold brew kind of, almost the difference between regular iced coffee and cold brew. There's like a weird thing that goes on there because it's cold brew, and I think a lot of that comes through here as well.
Yeah, the coffee is, it's very, very strong. It's not, I think we had one of the beers where it was something that was coffee in the aftertaste. This one, it's very upfront. I feel like it's the first flavor. You can almost, it's there's not really the super strong malt flavor, I feel, because
no, it
the
does
coffee,
overpower it a little bit.
Yes.
If you're a big coffee fan, it's almost like someone took a fairly neutral porter and just kind of dumped a little bit of coffee into it almost. It's really that present.
Yeah.
So, you might love that. I'm a big coffee drinker, so I'm a big fan here. But in terms of a porter, does throw the balance a little bit. I like what it does, but to each their own.
Yeah. There's also, there's something in the aftertaste too where I feel that really the kind of the effect where it really does seem like you're having a cold brew coffee. Just the way the aftertaste sits in your mouth. It's very interesting. I feel like I can't think of anything else quite like it. I mean, obviously there's a lot of coffee porters and a lot of ones where the coffee flavor is very pronounced, but this one is very unique, I feel, in the way that it tastes.
Absolutely. And one thing I was pondering, and I'm not the most educated person yet on all these processes, right? Part of this whole project is educating ourselves a little bit. But where they commented that they finished with a short cold brew cycle of a pound of coffee in the barrel. I don't know if that's how they always achieve the coffee flavor with most of these. I don't think it is, because I think it would be more pronounced if they did, like this one is. But that there may be something to that may be why we're kind of getting this very strong coffee taste, is because you're putting it so late in the process that it's really like, I mean, you're not adding it directly to the beer. You're letting it sit in the beans, but still, it's almost like you're, just kind of, like I said, dropping some coffee into the beer at the end versus kind of trying to get that throughout the process, through the malting process and all that. So I guess we'll go to scoring unless you have something else, and then we'll get on to the next one after that.
Yeah. All right, so our next beer is by Amherst Brewing in Amherst, Massachusetts. It is a toasted coconut cream coffee porter. It's a beer that was brewed in collaboration with Selburn Falls Coffee Roasters. It's brewed with malted oats, chocolate malts, and this Selburn Falls Roasting Company, I guess they included their roasted coconut cream coffee. So we've had lots of coffee porters, but I don't think we've had a coconut coffee porter yet. So I'm very anxious to try it. Haven't had this beer before, but coconut is definitely one of my favorite flavors. So I will pour that, and we will taste it and see how it goes.
Just one thing I wanted to point out while we were kind of chatting in between here, in terms of our coffee preferences. Mark puts sugar in his coffee. I don't. I'm a big fan of like really bitter, dark coffees. So that last one I really enjoyed. This one with the coconut cream, I think it's going to be probably fuller bodied, kind of silkier, I would think, feel to it. But we'll see if that all pans out. That's just kind of my suspicion, and we'll see if this. I think this is kind of going to be a different type of coffee porter. I think it's going to be a little less of that dark roasty kind of flavor and a little bit more, of an iced coffee with all the sweeteners in it kind of thing. So we'll see what we think in just a minute, I guess.
Yep.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Oh, that's super sweet.
Yep. Very sweet. Definitely do get a bit of coffee bitterness, though. Maybe a bit more on the aftertaste. The sweetness is definitely more up front.
Actually, not. It's still pretty smooth, but it's not as thick and full bodied as I had suspected it might have been. So I guess I gotta, nix what I said beforehand. But still very good. Still very drinkable beer for sure. Yeah. But not quite what I would expect with like the silky feel to it, especially with the creaminess. I definitely get the coconut. I don't get any too much creaminess anyways to it. But
there is coconut, but I feel it's pretty restrained. It's more upfront, and I definitely feel like it's more. You get a sweetness, and that sort of predominates. I feel like it's probably a sweetness from the coconut and from the malts, and then kind of there's more of just sort of a kind of a hint of coconut to the sweet flavor. So I'm kind of sort of surprised about that. I thought it would be a lot stronger. I've had a few other coconut flavored beers, and I remember those being that it was much more upfront than it is, and much more strong than it is in this beer.
Yep, definitely still there. Definitely still persistent, I'd say. I have a little bit of that coconut hint throughout. It's not something that goes right away, but like Mark said, it's not the most upfront thing there. I think they struck a pretty good balance, frankly, between the coconut and the coffee flavors. Again, a little biased in terms of favoring really strong bitter coffee flavors myself, but they did a pretty good job. With beers like this, where they try to have a few different things going on, right? Where toasted coconut cream coffee, that sometimes you really hit one and not so much of some of the others. But I think they did a pretty good job balancing all that out for sure. So I don't know if you have any further discussion on there, but I guess we could go to our sheets and come back in a minute unless there's something that jumps out at you. I guess we could circle back a little bit quickly to appearance. Out of what we've done today, I'd say this one, had almost zero head to it. It was gone almost as soon as it was poured, which that's fine. I mean, porters can be relatively still, but I did like that on some of the other stuff we've had. So.
One thing I've noticed is that it seems the more flavored porters, the one that mix in stuff like coffee or vanilla. They seem to have much less head than the ones that we had today that had quite a bit of head were more traditionally flavored. They didn't have any fancy really additives or anything. So I wonder if that might be something.
Yeah, it might do something to it that we're unaware of. And I guess I should stop to mention, so we're in episode 5 here, where we're talking about some of those beers with the thicker head to them. You're actually going to find those in the Porter Pour Off episode 4. So we're doing kind of multiple segments in a day, but then kind of releasing the pairings just to make them a little more manageable view-wise. So you don't have to commit too much time all at once just to figure out what beer we like out of a handful of beers. So that's in episode 4 if you're interested in those there. But I don't know. You're all set to go to the sheets?
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Let's score it up, and then we'll be back with the winner.
So after tasting the Amherst Brewing Toasted Coconut Cream Coffee Porter, and before that the Northwoods Coffee Porter, we have sort of a first here at New England Beer Buddies.
That's right.
We have a tie. I slightly preferred the Amherst Brewing Coconut Porter, and Garrett preferred the Northwoods Coffee Porter. I think we were talking about this, and we seem to think that this was probably had a lot to do with our differences in how we like our coffee. Garrett is a very fan of very bitter, drinking his coffee black. I tend to drink it more with at least some sugar and some cream. And I'm also a big fan of coconut. It's one of my favorite flavors. So I ended up slightly preferring the Amherst Porter, even though it was very close. It was only by 1 point according to our rankings, and Garrett was the exact opposite. By 1 point, he preferred the Northwoods Coffee Porter. So we're going to have to call it a tie.
Yep.
And so it's a first that we had a situation like that. Even though it was a small disagreement, it's also that a lot of the beers here have been, they really are they're higher quality. So the differences between them tend to be very small. Mm-hmm. That's kind of how we sort of evaluated those two. Would you like to say anything, Garrett?
Sure. So when we were off camera for a little bit, there were just a couple things that came up we didn't note when we were going through before. But in terms of aroma on the Amherst, we thought that it was a bit more coffee than coconut. I know coffee is a very strong flavor and smell all the way through, but they did balance. One of the areas I kind of gave them an additional point was in balance because of that sweetness. I think that did help a lot, despite the fact that I put the flavor up above a little bit on the Northwoods because of my coffee preferences mostly. And then I guess another thing I noted is that the Amherst, again probably because of the balance, did seem to have a slightly shorter aftertaste to it. Mm-hmm. It wasn't kind of weighing on me as long. I know we kind of cleanse our palate with water, so to speak, and we're both drinking quite a bit of water in between the two to try and get some of that strong coffee flavor out. And I would say the Northwoods, as much as it's a favorite of mine now, if you're not a black coffee drinker or especially if you're not a coffee drinker at all, you probably don't want it at all. But if you're not like a black coffee drinker or whatever, you might not find it as appealing as I did. So we have a tie. We'll figure out how to resolve that going forward, I guess. We have some ideas on that. But either way, I think you can't go wrong, whether it's the Amherst Brewing Toasted Coconut Cream Coffee Porter or the Northwoods Brewing Coffee Porter. Both great coffee examples, I think, from what we've from what we've had so far. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you had any other closing remarks before we tell people to like and subscribe and stuff, or
No, just to say that, yeah, you really can't go wrong with either one. I guess the only way you could go wrong is by not having any of them.
there you go. There you go. Please like, subscribe, comment, and if there's anything that you want to see here in this New England Porter Pour Off type series, please put it in the comments, and maybe you'll see it on here somewhere. And of course, as always, drink responsibly, be safe about it, and follow the laws of wherever you are. Be good about it, enjoy good beer, and stay out of trouble while you're doing it.
Yeah.
Alrighty, take care, guys. Thank you.